Good evening from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, where at this hour flight controllers are working with other support personnel around the world in preparation for the return of 3 crew members who resided aboard the International Space Station for the past 5.5 months. Here in the flight control room, Flight Director Judd Freeling is in charge of operations. He is standing in the center of your screen. Alongside him, on just above where he is spacecraft communicator Andreas Mogensen of the European Space Agency, as this team prepares for the deorbit burn of the Soyuz MS-06 spacecraft less than 38 minutes from now that will bring home Alexander Mazurkin of Roscosmos and NASA astronauts Joe Acaba and Mark Vande Hei. Across the Atlantic Ocean, just outside of Moscow in the town of Korolyov, you're looking at a live picture of the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Russian Mission Control Center, where Russian flight controllers are in communication with Mazurkin, the Soyuz commander, whose call sign is Altair, strapped into the center seat of the Soyuz descent module, flanked on his left by Mark Vande Hei and on his right by Joe Acaba, as they prepare for the deorbit burn that will begin the trip home after 168 days in space.
The atmospheric stage and the maximum G loads. Again, a reminder, we should have some COM for some time. So could you please provide reports? So what again, what is the moment when we have COM? Right after the maximum G load. So you will have the compass. The time is 05:12:20. So it's a kind of forecast that we will have COM at this particular moment.
That is the interpreted version of Russian flight controllers talking to Mazurkin on board the Soyuz MS-06 spacecraft with a rundown of when they can expect a loss of communications as they move through the plasma regime, entering the Earth's atmosphere. When they exit the plasma regime, that's the point at which the maximum G loads of about 4 to 5 Gs build up on the crew members on board the Soyuz, and when they can expect communications during that period of time. The focus of attention has been down at the landing site in south-central Kazakhstan over the past 48 hours. At this hour, weather conditions have improved somewhat. The search and recovery forces are at the Zhezkazgan airport, ready to board Russian Mi-8 helicopters around the time of the deorbit burn that's coming up in about 35 minutes to begin the trip. About 30 minutes helicopter ride down to the landing site, which is about 90 miles to the southeast of Zhezkazgan. Earlier concerns about weather conditions disrupting tonight's landing and recovery operations appear to have been superfluous, as the conditions have improved to the point where we are now looking at a forecast of overcast clouds, a cloud deck of overcast conditions at about 700 feet, about 3 miles of visibility and light fog, winds out of the southwest, 12 knots gusting to 18 knots, and a temperature which is fairly balmy for this time of the year in Kazakhstan of about 30 degrees Fahrenheit to greet the crew when they return. 12 Russian Mi-8 helicopters are being employed for tonight's recovery of Mazurkin, Acaba, and Vande Hei. 10 of them deploying from the Zhezkazgan airport to the prime landing site. 2 of the helicopters already were pre-positioned far to the southwest near the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, and they are going to be deployed from and be airborne from the Kryani airport near the launch site in Baikonur to move about halfway from Kryani toward the prime landing site in what is known as the ballistic landing region, in the unlikely event that a technical issue would cause the Soyuz to land short of its intended prime landing target. The Russian Mi-8 helicopters will be accompanied by all-terrain vehicles and Antonov fixed-wing aircraft. Those fixed-wing aircraft, particularly the large Antonov 26 aircraft, will be flying in the vicinity in a racetrack pattern around the landing zone to act as a flying command and control center and a data relay center that will relay both voice and telemetry from the Soyuz spacecraft back to the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov. So the stage is set for a nominal recovery operation back at the Karaganda airport, far to the northeast of the landing operations tonight. There is a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft at the Karaganda airport and a NASA Gulfstream jet. Once the crew is out of the Soyuz spacecraft following its landing, and if the nominal procedure is followed, where the crew is brought into a nearby inflatable medical tent to get out of their Sokol launch and entry suits into more comfortable flight clothing and to receive an initial battery of medical tests, the crew then will be loaded into 3 separate helicopters for a 2-hour helicopter flight back to Karaganda, after which they'll split up, with Akaba and Vandahai boarding that NASA jet for the trip back to Houston, and Mazurkin boarding the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft to be flown back to Chkalovsky Airfield outside of the training base in Star City, Russia, which is also his home.
Mark, what's the reading? 160. Good. Georgi. So it's 160 partial pressure of O2, so it is all calibrated. Would you please repeat your last, Alexander?
A little more than 5 hours ago, while still together as a 6-man crew on board the International Space Station, the crews had an opportunity to say farewell to one another, gathering in the small passageway between the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. Behind Mark Vandahai, as you can see in this view, is the open hatchway to the Soyuz MS-06. The crews again had a final opportunity to say goodbye to one another as Vandahai, Alexander Mazurkin there in the foreground, and Joe Akaba made their way through the hatch into the Soyuz MS-06 to close the hatch and begin undocking preparations. Everything has continued to go by the book. In the lower right-hand corner of your screen there is Anton Shkaplerov, who is the new space station commander for Expedition 55, which is now underway aboard the station under Shkaplerov's command, along with NASA astronaut Scott Tingle and Norishige Kanai of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. There you see the final technical coordination between the crews as Shkaplerov closed the hatch on the space station side of the docking interface between Poisk and the Soyuz MS-06, saying farewell to his colleagues who had been together with him and his other crewmates since they had been launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome back in December.
Vertical and horizontal come together under the...
Once the hatches had been closed between the Soyuz and the International Space Station's Poisk module, there were a series of leak checks to make sure that we had an airtight seal at the docking interface. The 3 crew members aboard Soyuz, Mazurkin, Akaba, and Vandahai, climbed into their Sokol launch and entry suits, conducted leak checks on the suits themselves, and then conducted the depressurization of the small passageway or vestibule between Poisk and the Soyuz to ensure that we were down to vacuum for the undocking that was coming up a short time thereafter. That undocking occurred as the Soyuz and the International Space Station passed over southeast Mongolia at an altitude of 252 statute miles at 5:08 p.m. Central Time, 6:08 p.m. Eastern Time. Springs on both sides of the docking interface pushed off against one another to enable the Soyuz to back away from Poisk. There were 2 separation burns conducted by the Soyuz thrusters in the minutes that followed to increase an opening rate to a distance of about 12 miles now, separating Soyuz and the International Space Station in preparation for the deorbit burn that's coming up in less than 29 minutes.
Guys, so the attitude has been built. We have joined GSO in attitude, and we have local vertical, and 180 0424 is the next time mark. We will have to send the command to inhibit the EKV sensors. We confirm that.
With everything in readiness, the Soyuz will conduct its deorbit burn a short time from now. That will be a 4-minute, 39-second retrograde firing of the Soyuz main engine to slow it down by 128 meters per second, enabling it to drop out of orbit for its entry into the Earth's atmosphere. Some 27 minutes after the deorbit burn, the pyrotechnic separation of the 3 sections of the Soyuz will begin. As it makes its way through the atmosphere, the heat shield in the direction of travel to repel the heat that will build up around the vehicle. About 15 minutes before touchdown, the command will be issued to open up the chutes, 2 pilot parachutes, followed by the deployment of a drogue chute and then the main parachute to slow the Soyuz down to a descent rate of 7.2 meters per second. And just a few seconds before touchdown, the soft landing engines on the aft of the Soyuz will fire and landing will occur. Landing is scheduled at 8:31 p.m. Central Time, 8:31 a.m. Kazakhstan time on Wednesday morning, 27 minutes before sunrise. Sunrise at the landing site is less than an hour away. And again, as we mentioned, the Russian search and recovery forces called Rosaviatsa, the civil search and recovery patrol team that works for the Russian government. They are all forwardly placed now at the airport in Zhezkazgan, which is to the northwest of the landing site itself. The Russian search and recovery forces soon will be boarding their respective helicopters to make their way down to the landing site, about a 30-minute trip to arrive at the landing site in advance of the Soyuz and form a racetrack oval-shaped pattern as they fly around the landing site awaiting the arrival of the Soyuz spacecraft. Aboard the International Space Station, the Expedition 55 crew, a 3-man crew for the next 3 weeks, will have an opportunity to have an off-duty day tomorrow, basically take a breather after a rather high-paced level of activity over the past few weeks. Anton Shkaplerov is the new space station commander from Roscosmos, joined by NASA's Scott Tingle and Norishige Kanai, the flight engineer from the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. That 3-man crew will conduct what are known as indirect handover operations as a 3-man crew for the next 3 weeks until the launch on March 21st of the next trio of residents who will take up occupancy at the space station. That crew, led by Oleg Artemiev and NASA astronauts Drew Feustel and Ricky Arnold, are set to launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome on March 21st on the Soyuz MS-08 spacecraft from the Baikonur Cosmodrome on a 2-day 34-orbit rendezvous with a docking scheduled to the Poisk module on March 23rd to restore the station to a 6-man operation.
Гош, ты с нами на связи?
Moscow,
Да, я на связи.
Soyuz. Gosha, are you there? Yes.
Напомни, пожалуйста, а Г4 мы
Could you please remind me regarding
планируем?
G4 command? Should we send it? Are we planning
Необходимости нету.
to send it? No, there is no need to send it, Sasha.
Необходимости?
No need? Okay, copy that.
A short time ago, the crew was informed about the updated coordinates for landing based on the latest information from the ballistics specialists at the Russian Mission Control Center. The current coordinates, and this of course could be tweaked and changed after landing, but the current landing coordinates are 47.25 north latitude, 69.37 east longitude. Again, that is the prime landing site in the southern zone called Zone 6. That is to the southeast of the town of Jezkazgan, about 90 miles from Jezkazgan. It's about a 30-minute helicopter ride. Those helos will have their rotors spinning a short time from now, with the first helicopters taking off around the time of the deorbit burn, some 22 minutes from now.
Саша, мы еще должны тебе одну вещь напомнить.
Sasha, there is another reminder.
Включить тумблер ВП-1, собственно говоря, на 56-й странице перед разделением.
At page 66, before the separation, don't forget about the switch.
Хорошо, спасибо.
Georgi,
Включим перед разделением.
thank you for the reminder. We will activate it before the separation.
Ну и под парашютом вам предписано его отключить.
And before you deploy the parachute, you will have to switch off the switch.
Отлично, это подойдет.
After the change of the parachutes, yes, that's correct.
This is Mission Control Houston, less than 18 minutes away from the deorbit burn. That will begin the final leg of the trip home for Joe Acaba, Mark Vande Hei, and Alexander Mazurkin. Again, the three-person crew left on the International Space Station, now Expedition 55, is Anton Shkaplerov, the new station commander, joined by Scott Tingle of NASA and Norishige Kanai of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. That will expand to a six-person crew in 3 weeks with the arrival of Drew Feustel and Ricky Arnold of NASA and Russian cosmonaut Oleg Artemyev. The deorbit burn once again will be 4 minutes 39 seconds in duration, slowing the Soyuz down by 128 meters per second, starting at an altitude of 265 statute miles. Currently, the Soyuz MS-06 and the International Space Station are flying over the South Pacific, moving from northwest to southeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. The latest report from the landing site from NASA personnel who are in coordination with the Russian search and recovery forces is that the GCTC aircraft at Karaganda is planning to fly to Zhezkazgan to simplify the recovery operations. The NASA Gulfstream jet that's also at the Karaganda airport is awaiting the green light to relocate to Zhezkazgan itself, contingent on suitable runway conditions at Zhezkazgan. A small contingent of NASA support personnel, including a flight surgeon, Chad Rowe, who's the Director of Human Spaceflight Operations in Russia, and a pair of Russian nurses who are assigned to NASA. They spent the night in all-terrain vehicles near the landing zone. The plan is for them to watch the landing from there and then relocate to the capsule. They're just a few kilometers away from the landing site. So the Russian search and recovery forces are playing it safe, but continuing with a series of procedures here to ensure nominal operations. Meanwhile, the first of the 10 helicopters that had been pre-positioned at the Zhezkazgan airport are now airborne en route to the landing zone.
There was a LOS. Mark, do you monitor the partial O2 pressure? Sasha, we did not hear you. There was a short LOS. Yes, Zhora? We sent the inhibit recover command at the prescribed time, and visually the attitude is built for retrograde motion, no issues. I copy you. Thank you.
На белый шрифт ВКУ, когда расстыковывались, когда запускали динамику, и не сказали тебе, что все, можешь использовать любой, который тебе понравится.
Sasha, we asked you to select, the modes on VKU, whatever you like, whatever is most suitable for you. Copy.
Ну что, ждем разворот через 5 минут.
Okay, so in 5 minutes, we're standing by for the maneuver.
Ждем.
We're standing by.
This is Mission Control Houston, 12.5 minutes away now from the deorbit burn to begin the descent back into the Earth's atmosphere for the Soyuz MS-06. The Soyuz commander, Alexander Mazurkin, will be using the call sign Altair. You'll be hearing that referred to in calls from the Russian flight controllers in Korolyov. You're looking at a balcony view of their flight control room just outside of Moscow. And again, the latest information is that the Russian search and recovery forces are going to be sending the GCTC, the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft, from the Karaganda Airport to Zhezkazgan to be forwardly placed to receive the crew once they land and get in their respective helicopters for a shorter flight. This is essentially the way we recovered Scott Kelly 2 years ago after his year in space by repositioning the aircraft to Zhezkazgan, making it only a 30-minute helicopter flight from the landing zone back to Zhezkazgan itself. The NASA Gulfstream jet is awaiting a final approval to take off from Karaganda to head to Zhezkazgan, also dependent on suitable runway conditions in Zhezkazgan. There is some snow falling at the landing site, mostly a wet snow, not much accumulation reported. The visibility is acceptable. Everything appears to be proceeding on track for an on-time and nominal landing and recovery operation for Akaba, Vandehei, and Mazurkin.
The maneuver will start in 1 minute. Thank you. And then I'll have to press this. Yes, Mark. Affirmative. Okay.
That's
20 seconds. All right, the maneuver is complete. I just saw it on the display. Copy, Alexander. And right now you can deactivate the fans. We send the C3 command. It has been sent. and T9 has been already illuminated.
Six and a half minutes until the deorbit burn. Everything in readiness. Alexander Mazurkin strapped into the center seat of the descent module, flanked on his left by Mark Vandehei, Joe Acaba on the right. The crew ready for a 4-minute, 39-second retrograde firing of the Soyuz main engines to slow them down by 128 meters per second and begin the descent out of orbit and back into the Earth's atmosphere.
Georgi, 1 more minute. During the descent, Alexander, please report every second the time and the value of the burn, and also that CADU is operating nominally, so please report on that during the descent. Copy. Thank you.
Within seconds after the completion of the deorbit burn, the orbital module, the uppermost section, the bulbous section of the Soyuz spacecraft, will be depressurized. That's done in advance of the pyrotechnic separation of the three sections of the Soyuz spacecraft. The module separation commanded some 27 minutes after the deorbit burn, scheduled just before 8:06 p.m. Central Time this evening.
Alexander, one more thing. Don't forget the following. During the re-entry, tighten the straps so that you are secure, you're safely strapped during the landing, and make sure that the ODF is secured properly for the landing. Yes, copy. All right, copy. Thank you. Okay, Mark, O2. Light. Okay, so what is the current value? It is 185. Inaudible is not illuminated anymore, and the value is 185. That is correct. Okay. PKRD is closed. Yes, it's closed. Thank you.
Less than 3.5 minutes away from the deorbit burn, the Russian flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov have instructed Mazurkin to provide a running narrative of the progress of the deorbit burn in terms of chamber pressure and fuel consumption for the 4-minute, 39-second duration of that engine firing that will slow the Soyuz down, allowing it to drop out of orbit for its high-speed entry back into the Earth's atmosphere. Mazurkin, Vandehei, and Acaba wrapping up 168 days in space. 2,688 orbits of the Earth and a journey of 71.1 million statute miles.
Две минуты до включения.
2 minutes till the ignition.
Подтверждаем, 2 минуты.
Yes, we confirm the same, 2 minutes.
G3 можно уже выдать.
And you can...
Coming up on 1.5 minutes until the deorbit burn, the Soyuz and the International Space Station now flying over the South Atlantic just to the east of the Falkland Islands, about to begin a southwest to northeasterly swing that will carry the two craft across the west coast of Africa a short time from now.
G3 has been sent.
Inside a minute until the initiation of the deorbit burn.
7 is confirmed. Combined GSO is also confirmed. And we are expecting SKD opening. Yes, it's open. Thank you.
The burn is enabled, standing by for the initiation of the ignition of the main engines.
Полминуты до включения двигателя.
1 minute till thruster firing.
Обобщенная ГСО по-прежнему есть.
Combined GSO is still confirmed. Visual attitude cannot be controlled anymore. 5 seconds. And we expect thrusters to fire. SKD is on. It is illuminated.
And the deorbit burn is underway, right on time, with the Soyuz flying over the South Atlantic, a 4-minute, 39-second retrograde firing.
15 seconds, 046, and the burn value is 7.9. Copy.
Отработали 30 секунд.
30 seconds, 046, and the burn value is 14.6, and we're going to page 52. Correction, page 53. Copy, Mark. Thank you. And the prop pressure, thank you very much, Mark, is 1427. 1 minute, 046, and the burn is 29 meters. Copy, that's great. 1 minute, 15 seconds, 046, 35 meters. The parameters are nominal. Copy. But the prop pressure is 1194. The prop consumption 96 kilograms. Inaudible. 1 minute, 45 seconds, 046, 48 meters. Parameters are nominal. Two minutes, 046, 128 kilograms of used prop, 57 meters. Copy. The parameters are nominal.
Halfway through the deorbit burn, everything looking good on board the Soyuz MS-06.
7, the burn in 64 meters. Parameters are nominal. 230, 047, 70 meters. Copy. We are approaching the first stage. 245, 047. The burn is 76 meters. Parameters are nominal. Copy. Three minutes. 193 kilograms of prop has been used. 047. The burn is 84 meters. Parameters are nominal. Copy. 315, 047, 91 meters. Parameters are nominal. 330, 226 kilograms of prop has been used. 048, 99 meters, and properties and parameters are nominal. Copy. 345, 048, 105 meters. The parameters are nominal.
Nearing the end of the deorbit burn. So far, so good. This should result in a reduction in velocity by about 128 meters per second for the Soyuz MS-06 and its 3 occupants.
Prop has been used. 048, 113 meters. Parameters are nominal. Copy. 415. The burn is 119,048. Parameters are nominal, and we're preparing for SKD deactivation. The burn is 125, 126. SKD is off. The thermal sensors are connected. Copy.
And the deorbit burn is now complete, having achieved the necessary deceleration of the Soyuz velocity. Landing scheduled 47.5 minutes from now.
Mark, can you please check BO pressure in work? SO pressure is stable at 753, and the BO pressure is decreasing. Copy. Inaudible.
And right on schedule, the upper section of the 3-section Soyuz spacecraft, the orbital module, is being depressurized in preparation for module separation, the pyrotechnic separation of the 3 sections of the Soyuz. That is coming up just before 8:06 p.m. Central Time this evening.
Everything is correct. I can hardly hear you, but I will continue reporting. Okay, Alexander, I agree with that plan. We have you loud and clear. Copy, Georgi. BO pressure is 150, and SO pressure is stable at 753. Copy, Alexander. The noise is really loud, but please keep reporting.
In about 12 minutes or so, the Soyuz vehicle will be about 93 miles away, or 150 kilometers away from the International Space Station. This is at the point where VHF voice communications is expected to be at best ratty and may be unavailable for a period of time due to the distance between the antennas on the Soyuz vehicle and those that receive VHF communications on the International Space Station. Once the Soyuz approaches its landing site, voice communication and data telemetry from the Soyuz will be available through an Antonov 26 fixed-wing aircraft that is going to be airborne in a racetrack pattern around the landing site to act as a flying command and control center, relaying that information back to the Russian Mission Control Center that you see in this view from a balcony camera in Korolyov outside of Moscow. So it is typical for voice communications to be lost for a period of time, with the crew returning in a Soyuz vehicle just based on the geometry between the communications antennas on the Soyuz and the International Space Station. The two vehicles are currently flying over the South Atlantic, approaching the west coast of Africa. The Soyuz has completed its deorbit burn and is now beginning to slip out of low Earth orbit for its entry into the Earth's atmosphere. The key times that you should be aware of: the module separation is the next major milestone at 8:05 and 51 seconds p.m. Central Time, followed about 3 minutes later at 8:08 and 41 seconds Central Time by entry interface, the point at which the Soyuz will literally enter the Earth's atmosphere at an altitude of about 326,000 feet. The crew and the Soyuz will begin to feel the first tug of gravity on their bodies since they were launched back on September 13th last year. They will move into the plasma regime. Their entry into plasma is scheduled at 8:10 p.m. Central Time for about 5 minutes. And once they exit that plasma, they will experience their maximum buildup of G loads, gravity loads on their bodies of about 4 to 5 Gs at an altitude of some 20 miles above the Earth. The command to open chutes on the Soyuz is scheduled to be initiated at 8:17 p.m. Central Time. 2 pilot parachutes will first be deployed, the second of which will extract the drogue chute on the Soyuz vehicle. The drogue chute is then released, slowing the Soyuz down from a descent rate of 230 meters per second to just 80 meters per second. The main parachute will follow in sequence, covering an area of some 1,000 meters. It slows the Soyuz down to a descent rate of just over 7 meters per second. Its harnesses first allowing the Soyuz to descend at a canted angle of some 30 degrees to expel excess heat from reentry. Then it shifts the Soyuz to a straight vertical descent. The soft landing engines will fire just a few seconds before touchdown.
Когда ты хочешь, что мы закроем первый шлем?
Audible.
Айтер, я получаю вас.
59, правильно? Да, не позднее это надо. Ну вот 0459 закроем.
0459.
Джо, как ты там?
Joe, how are you? Great.
Хорошо.
That's good.
Альтаир, 15 минут до разделения.
Altair's, the separation will take place in 15 minutes. Georgi, I can hardly hear you. 15 minutes till the separation. Copy, Georgi, thank you.
And with voice communications having been temporarily restored between the Soyuz and the Russian Mission Control Center, reminding them that module separation is scheduled now in about 14 minutes if everything goes as planned. That module separation will occur at an altitude of 140 kilometers or just under 87 miles above the Earth. Everything continuing to go smoothly, touchdown less than 40 minutes from now. The Russian search and recovery forces in a series of Russian Mi-8 helicopters are airborne heading to the landing site. They will line up and queue up basically in a racetrack pattern around the landing zone, awaiting the arrival of the Soyuz vehicle. Once it touches down, the most critical recovery helicopters will touch down in sequence right behind the Soyuz vehicle, including the teams that will have the inflatable medical tent, if it is to be used tonight at the landing site or Wednesday morning, as the case may be locally in Kazakhstan. That will be followed in succession by other critical RSC Energia and medical support personnel who will be working to extract the crew from the Soyuz spacecraft and place them in chairs nearby their vehicle for a short period of reorientation to Earth's gravity, an opportunity to get their equilibrium back before they're either brought into the medical tent, should it be used tonight, or to reload them into the Mi-8 helicopters, one for each crew member that will return them. In this case, it appears to Zhezkazgan with just a 30-minute helicopter ride from the landing site. And once again, communications with the Soyuz vehicle are, as expected, intermittent at this point as the Soyuz approaches the beginning of its descent through the Earth's atmosphere. Alexander Mazurkin, the Soyuz commander, operating under the call sign of Altair, was instructed to continue talking, providing status reports, so that if communications or when communications are restored, either through the VHF link or through the Antonov 26 fixed-wing aircraft at the landing site, the Russian flight controllers will be receiving those communications in a prompt fashion. This is Mission Control Houston, our first view of the landing site to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. This is from a satellite link from one of the all-terrain vehicles that began its trek about 36 hours ago from Zhezkazgan to the landing site. It is not exactly at the touchdown point where the Soyuz is expected to land, but it's close. And as soon as the Soyuz has in fact landed, this all-terrain vehicle and other support vehicles will make their way to the spacecraft for the expedited extraction of the crew. The temperature at the landing site is about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. We're inside 35 minutes until touchdown. Everything is continuing to go by the timeline. We're about 9 minutes away from the computer-commanded pyrotechnic separation of the three sections of the Soyuz spacecraft. Again, this is a view from an all-terrain vehicle at the landing site, some 90 miles to the southeast of the town of Jezkazgan. You can see the dusting of snow on the terrain there. The temperature is some 30 degrees Fahrenheit, which is fairly mild for this time of the year in south-central Kazakhstan. At the landing site, the search and recovery forces have now refined what they believe will be the landing coordinates for the Soyuz MS-06. The current coordinates 47.19 north latitude, 69.34 east longitude. That would be a bullseye touchdown for the Soyuz if it materializes. Landing schedule 31 minutes from now. This is Mission Control Houston, about 3 minutes away from the scheduled separation of the 3 sections of the Soyuz spacecraft. We're less than 30 minutes away from touchdown. Alexander Mazurkin strapped in the center seat of the descent module of the Soyuz, flanked on his left by Mark Vande Hei, wrapping up his first mission in space, and to Mazurkin's right, Joe Acaba, completing his 3rd flight into space and 2nd long-duration mission on the International Space Station.
Altair, Moscow, how do you copy? Altair, if you copy us, could you please reply?
Countdown clocks here in Mission Control ticking backward toward the anticipated landing of the Soyuz MS-06 some 27 minutes from now. We are standing by for the next major milestone, which will be module separation.
Call us if you can hear us. This separation will happen in 1 minute and a half, 90 seconds. Georgi, the com is intermittent, so the separation program is activated. We are standing by for Esgarazar, so uncaged. And the time is, the separation time is 05:05:50.
And once again, voice communications with the crew restored. Standing by for module separation.
We copied. We are standing by for the separation.
And we have confirmation of module separation right on time.
Confirm the separation, if you can hear us.
The confirmation of module separation occurring at an altitude of 87 miles above the Earth. The Soyuz MS-06 descending by the book. The next activity of note will be entry interface, the Soyuz entering the first traces of Earth's atmosphere. That coming up in less than 3 minutes at an altitude of 326,000 feet or 62 miles above the Earth. The first pull of Earth's gravity against Mazurkin, Acaba, and Vande Hei in 168 days. Everything throughout the course of the day has gone by the timeline. The crew members saying farewell to one another aboard the International Space Station and closing the hatch on the Soyuz vehicle just before 2 p.m. Central Time. Undocking occurred some 3 hours later at 5:08 p.m. Central, 6:08 p.m. Eastern Time, as the International Space Station and the Soyuz MS-06 spacecraft undocked over southeast Mongolia. Left on board the three-person crew of Anton Shkaplerov, the new Soyuz, or the new International Space Station commander, and his two crewmates, NASA's Scott Tingle and Norishige Kanai of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. They will be a three-person crew for the next 3 weeks until the launch on March 21st and the docking 2 days later of Oleg Artemyev and NASA astronauts Drew Feustel and Ricky Arnold. And there's video once again from the landing site, 90 miles to the southeast of Zhezkazgan. Solid overcast at the landing site. Temperatures about 30 degrees Fahrenheit as the first all-terrain vehicles queue up, ready to move into position near the spacecraft once it touches down.
Удачного спуска, Альтаир.
Altair, we wish you successful landing.
And a good view of some of the all-terrain vehicles that set out from Zhezkazgan about 36 hours ago. They are not at the landing site specifically. They're nearby, but it won't take very long for them to move towards the Soyuz spacecraft once it has touched down. Landing scheduled 22 minutes from now.
Unintelligible noise.
The Soyuz spacecraft has not only entered the Earth's atmosphere, but now is in the plasma regime for about the next 5 minutes. This is where temperatures around the spacecraft will build up to about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit, ablated by the heat shield as the descent module travels in that direction with the heat shield pointed in the direction of travel. Once the Soyuz emerges from this plasma regime in about 3 minutes or so, the crew will feel its maximum G load building up on their bodies, 4 to 5 Gs, at an altitude of some 21 miles above the Earth. Touchdown now less than 19 minutes away.
Altair, it is Moscow. Altair, MCC Moscow, how do you copy?
This is Mission Control Houston, some 16.5 minutes away from the landing of Mazurkin, Akaba, and Vandahai in Kazakhstan. The search and recovery helicopters are nearing the landing zone.
We can hear you. So what is the entry offset value? The 10 to the right. Altair, how do you copy? I copy loud and clear. The integral is 17, the offset. Inaudible. 0, 7, 10, 16, integral 16 plus. How are you feeling, guys? Oh, better than anyone. Stop pressure. 756 millimeters, 756. Inaudible. So the integral is 14 plus 209. Copy.
You're hearing that familiar beeping tone from a radio beacon on the Soyuz spacecraft that is providing position information to the search and recovery forces at the landing site in Kazakhstan, with touchdown expected just 15 minutes from now. We should be in position now where the Soyuz would have almost consistent communications from Alexander Mazurkin, the Soyuz commander, with the Antonov 26 fixed-wing aircraft relaying data, telemetry, and altitude position through the Soyuz altimeter to the Russian flight controllers there in Korolyov. We should be moments away from the command to open up the parachutes on the Soyuz. We'll be standing by for chute confirmation shortly. This command expected at an altitude of 10.5 kilometers or 6.5 miles above the Earth. Less than 12.5 minutes until the anticipated touchdown of the Soyuz MS-06. We're still standing by for confirmation of chute deploy, which should have occurred just a couple of minutes ago. And search and recovery helicopters in the vicinity of the landing zone have now established visual contact with the Soyuz MS-06. Parachutes are out. Everything continuing to proceed normally towards touchdown 11.5 minutes from now. Once again, the Rosaviatsa Russian search and recovery forces in the vicinity of the landing zone, especially the airborne Russian Mi-8 helicopters, have established a visual contact with the Soyuz MS-06. Its parachute has been deployed as it continues to descend toward its landing site some 90 miles to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. 9 minutes until touchdown, everything continuing to proceed per the schedule. The Soyuz descending under its large main parachute towards a position some 90 miles to the southeast of the remote town of Juzkazgan in south-central Kazakhstan. Search and recovery forces, all-terrain vehicles are all positioned to begin the recovery of the crew a short time after touchdown. This is Mission Control Houston. You're looking at a view from a balcony camera overlooking the Russian Mission Control Center in the town of Korolyov on the outskirts of Moscow. As we are just 7 minutes away from the anticipated touchdown of the Soyuz MS-06 descending under its parachute towards its landing zone to the southeast of the town of Juzkazgan. Everything per the entry timeline has gone by the book so far, as we're standing by for the search and recovery forces who are in contact with the crew on board the Soyuz to provide updates for us as we approach landing time. Inside 5 minutes until touchdown. All quiet on the loops at this point. The search and recovery forces are positioning themselves to begin the process of arriving at the capsule following touchdown to begin the extraction of Mazurkin, Akaba, and Vandahai. This is Mission Control Houston. By the clock, we're about 2 minutes away from touchdown. Still awaiting further voice communication from the Russian search and recovery forces, who are in visual contact with the Soyuz spacecraft descending under its main parachute.
Inaudible.
We should be seconds away from the anticipated touchdown of the Soyuz spacecraft. Still waiting for verbal confirmation of that. The all-terrain vehicles near the landing site that provided television a short time ago are likely repositioning themselves closer to the touchdown point to reestablish a video capability for post-landing activities. At the Karaganda Airport, the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft is ready to take off to head to Zhezkazgan, has not yet received approval to do so, to move to Zhezkazgan, so they're standing by for the green light, as is a NASA Gulfstream jet. And there it is, Soyuz MS-06 back on Earth. The official touchdown time was 8:31 p.m. Central Time, right on the dot, right on the money, and it landed in an upright position. The large orange and white parachute billowing nearby, but there is your spacecraft with its 3 occupants back on Earth: Alexander Mazurkin, Joe Acaba, and Mark Vande Hei, back on terra firma after 168 days in space. Again, the report from the Russian Mission Control Center was that touchdown occurred right on time at 8:31 p.m. Central Time, 8:31 a.m. Wednesday morning at the landing site in Kazakhstan, you see a thick overcast greeting the crew upon its return to Earth. The spacecraft, reportedly from the search and recovery forces, landed in an upright position. What that means is that the crew will emerge from the upper hatch on the Soyuz and clamber down a small ladder to be placed, we presume, in a series of chairs nearby the spacecraft for a short period of time to get their land legs back. You see one of the search and recovery helicopters about to land nearby, but Akaba, Van de Haye, and Mazurkin are back on Earth after 168 days and a mission that spans 71.1 million miles. And all-terrain vehicles now moving in position near the spacecraft. We'll be getting a closer view of the Soyuz spacecraft once the satellite link on the all-terrain vehicle moves closer to the capsule itself. And you're looking at one of the search and recovery helicopters landing nearby the Soyuz MS-06. And the report now from the Russian Mission Control Center from the search and recovery forces, Alexander Mazurkin reporting that the crew is feeling very well. You can see in this live view from an all-terrain vehicle at the landing site in south-central Kazakhstan. Some of the RSC Energia technical personnel are working to remove the lines from the large parachute from the Soyuz descent module. Inside that descent module, Mazurkin, Van de Haye, and Akaba are waiting to be extracted one by one. The crew should be extracted shortly following its on-time landing at 8:31 p.m. Central Time, 8:31 a.m. Wednesday morning in Kazakhstan. And now the all-terrain vehicles are repositioned close to the descent module. A great view of the Soyuz MS-06, and you can see that ladder set up alongside of the spacecraft. The crew will be extracted from the top of the Soyuz. Alexander Mazurkin, the commander, who's in the center seat, will be the first out. Once again, a good view of the Soyuz MS-06. We'll get that signal back momentarily. The spacecraft landed upright on time about 10 minutes ago at 8:31 p.m. Central Time, about 90 miles southeast of Zhezkazgan in south central Kazakhstan. And the RSC Energia personnel are repositioning the ladder on the proper side of the Soyuz vehicle, through which the crew will be extracted a short time from now. Again, there are two hatches from which the crew can be extracted on a Soyuz spacecraft. For a landing in which the spacecraft is pulled over onto its side, there's a side hatch that they extract the crew from. In this case, having landed upright, this will be the more traditional extraction of the crew from the top hatch. And the first crew member that will be removed from the spacecraft will be Alexander Mazurkin. This is Mission Control Houston. It's been about 14 minutes since the landing of the Soyuz MS-06 on the steppe of Kazakhstan. You see members of the NASA team of the search and recovery forces who flew from Zhezkazgan by Russian Mi-8 helicopters to the landing site. The Soyuz landed upright, obviously, and the RSC Energia technical personnel are in the process of beginning the extraction of the crew one by one down that ladder. The likelihood is they'll be put in reclining chairs for a few minutes to get their land legs. We'll be standing by for further disposition of where they intend to take the crew, whether it will be inside an inflatable medical tent. We're still waiting for word as to whether or not both a NASA Gulfstream jet and a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft will be dispatched from the staging city of Karaganda to the forward staging point in Zhezkazgan to expedite the recovery of the crew. These are members of the Rosaviatsa Search and Recovery Forces coordinating the further and future disposition of the crew once they're extracted from the Soyuz spacecraft. Landing occurred some 17 minutes ago on time at 8:31 p.m. Central Time, 8:31 a.m. Wednesday morning there in Kazakhstan. This is Mission Control Houston. Again, you're looking at the Soyuz MS-06 spacecraft on the ground as the extraction of the crew members is underway. Part of the search and recovery team, the NASA support team, included NASA Public Affairs Officer Dan Hewitt, who is at the landing site right by the spacecraft. Dan, if you can hear me, tell us what is going on as we watch the action here via the satellite link from Kazakhstan.
Yeah, sure thing, Robin. I got you loud and clear. Sounds like you're already getting videos. As you can see, the capsule's down on the ground, landed upright. We actually got to watch it come down under the chutes quite a bit, and then it disappeared into a cloud layer. There's clouds, I think the last we heard were about 400 meters or so off the ground, but pretty cloudy, but good visibility besides that. Cold temperatures, but not as cold as it's been. But so far, successful landing. You can see the search and recovery forces are up on top of the Soyuz right now. They're going to start pulling the crew out any moment now.
Dan, despite the weather conditions and the uncertainty about movement of planes and so forth, it looked like the helicopters landed in very swift fashion, and of course a Soyuz landing upright only helps to expedite the extraction of the crew, right?
Yeah, we got lucky. We've been dodging weather, it seems, for the past couple of days. Things were looking pretty bleak until yesterday. We actually had quite a bit of rain, turned into freezing rain. So some icy conditions, but luckily the weather moved through a lot faster than was anticipated, and we were able to have a nominal landing today. So it's good to be out here. We're worried we might get stuck in airports and stuff, but all the teams made it out, and pretty soon we'll be seeing these crew members.
Is the inflatable medical tent going to be erected and in play following the extraction of the crew?
The plan is for the tent. I don't see it being set up quite yet, but as you might be able to hear, we still have helicopters landing. A team has come ahead of time on a series of all-terrain vehicles, the ATVs. We actually had some of the NASA teams camp out last night with them just in case the helicopters weren't able to make it. But as far as the last plan communicated, the medical tent should be set up here. All three crew members going to be taking part in that field test experiment, and the nominal plan has them doing it right here at the landing zone.
And I don't know if you've heard anything more recent there on the ground, but we're still waiting for a final decision as to whether or not the crew will be flown in helicopters back to Zhezkazgan for an expedited return there, or whether they'll go back to Karaganda where the GCTC and NASA planes are.
I expect to find out shortly, but last word, the nominal plan is going to be to have the crew go to Zhezkazgan. And it looks like there we go, our first crew member out. Looks like we got Mazurkin coming down the slide first. And so with that, our center seater, our Soyuz commander, is out. He's going to get carried over now. They have the stairs set up already, just a few feet away. And next up, our NASA crew members will be coming out shortly.
Dan, appreciate all of the info, and we'll be looking forward to further information here shortly on where the crew is going to go and the inflatable medical tent, and whether or not the field testing that is part of this post-flight medical data collection, whether that will be in play today given the conditions out there.
Yep, and even if they aren't able to do it in the field test always has a backup of doing it back at the airport that we deploy to. So that is still on the table if they aren't able to deploy the medical tent.
And Dan, as you are speaking, we're hearing that both the GCTC plane, the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft, and the NASA Gulfstream jet will be relocating to Zhezkazgan from Karaganda. They've just received approval to do that. As we look at Alexander Mazurkin, the Soyuz commander, who has now logged 334 days in space on his 2 long-duration flights. So it appears as if you and the other helicopters will be flying the 30 minutes, the shorter distance, to Zhezkazgan along with the crew members for the disposition of their activities before they split up to head back to their respective homes.
Yep, well, copy that. All right, we got a couple more helicopters coming in, and we're going to be pulling these crews out, so I'm going to get back to work here. It was good talking to you as always, and I'll talk to you again soon, Rob.
All right, Dan, have a safe trip home. Dan Hewitt, NASA Public Affairs Officer with the Search and Recovery Forces in Kazakhstan. Joe Acaba, out of the Soyuz spacecraft, having completed his 3rd flight into space and a total of 306 days in space. And as he was for both launch and today's entry and landing, Acaba seated in a chair to the right of Alexander Mazurkin. Mark Vande Hei will be the last out of the spacecraft, and he'll be placed in a chair to the left of Alexander Mazurkin. Again, we've, in the last few minutes, received word from the search and recovery forces that both the NASA Gulfstream jet in Karaganda and the Gagarin cosmonaut training aircraft will be dispatched from Karaganda to the Jez-Kazgan airport to receive the crew, as Vande Hei and Akaba will board that NASA jet in Jez-Kazgan for the trip back to Houston. Mazurkin will board the Gagarin cosmonaut training aircraft for the flight back to his home and his training base in Star City, Russia. And there is Mark Vande Hei, all three crew members now out of the spacecraft.
Welcome back.
This is Mission Control Houston. Once again, views of Joe Akaba, Mark Vande Hei, Alexander Mazurkin at the landing site, being attended to by their flight surgeons and NASA nurses. They will be boarding respective helicopters soon to be flown about 30 minutes to the northwest from the landing site to the town of Jez-Kazgan, where the NASA Gulfstream jet that had landed several days ago in Karaganda, along with a Gagarin cosmonaut training center aircraft, will be relocated from Karaganda to Jez-Kazgan. Because of the improving weather conditions at the landing site and at the staging cities.
There were some changes. I
This is Mission Control Houston. It has been about 29 minutes since the landing of Soyuz MS-06 in a remote landing site to the southeast of the town of Jezkazgan. You're looking at the 3 crew members enjoying some fresh air after 168 days in space. A journey of 71.1 million miles at an end. Alexander Mazurkin, the Soyuz commander, right in the field of view. On the right of your screen, NASA astronaut Mark Vande Hei having completed his first flight into space of 168 days.
A nominal landing, and everything was fine. There was nothing unexpected. There were no malfunctions, and we're very glad to see you. Thank you.
Oh, no, it's interesting. It's, but the night level there is awesome.
What about the tent?
Was when they were, when the G's got up to about 4 inches, I could actually feel it.
And as you can see, members of the Search and Recovery Force is about to hoist Alexander Mazurkin in his chair. They'll be moved, we believe, to an inflatable medical tent nearby to get out of their Sokol launch and entry suits into more comfortable flight clothing and to receive their first medical tests following their return to Earth, which culminated in an on-time, on-target landing at 8:31 p.m. Central Time.
Was the food good? It was excellent.
And as you can see, the orange tent has been erected near the spacecraft. Alexander Mazurkin has already been brought inside. Akaba and Van der Heide to follow. RSC Energia personnel also clamoring around the spacecraft to remove some of the initial cargo that was brought home from the International Space Station. And you can see Van der Heide and Akaba both being assisted in their chairs into the inflatable medical tent. Again, the plan is that they will get out of their Ahsoka launch and entry suits. They'll get into more comfortable flight clothing, receive initial medical tests.
Why are we stopping? Let's go. Let's go.
The plan calls for a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft and the NASA Gulfstream jet that flew several days ago into the Karaganda Airport, the main staging city to the north east of the landing site, for those planes to be relocated to the airport in Zhezkazgan, just 90 miles away from this landing site you're looking at. That will help expedite the crew members to fly in search and recovery helicopters only about 30 minutes to Zhezkazgan, where they ultimately will split up, with Van der Heide and Akaba boarding that NASA jet for the flight back to Houston, and for Mazurkin to board the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft to fly back to his training base and his home at Star City outside of Moscow.
How about now? So I'm going to go to the tent and take the video of the medical processes. Just in case over here.
This is Mission Control Houston, a view back inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center. You saw the video over the past 45 minutes or so of the extraction of the returning crew members who landed safely in the Soyuz MS-06 spacecraft at 8:31 p.m. Central Time, 8:31 a.m. Kazakhstan time on Wednesday morning. The entry and landing were perfect. Everything went by the book. And at this hour, the 3 crew members are inside the inflatable medical tent nearby their spacecraft in south central Kazakhstan, getting out of their launch and entry suits, getting into more comfortable flight clothing, as they will ultimately be flown by helicopters about 30 minutes to the northwest to the town of Zhezkazgan, where a Gagarin cosmonaut training aircraft and a NASA Gulfstream jet are being relocated from Karaganda to Zhezkazgan for the final act in the recovery of the crew. This is Mission Control Houston. With the television at the landing site having been terminated following the extraction of the 3 Soyuz crew members from their spacecraft, they are now inside an inflatable medical tent nearby. They're getting out of their Sokol launch and entry suits, getting into more comfortable clothing. They will be flown by helicopters about 30 minutes to the town of Zhezkazgan, where 2 aircraft, a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft and a NASA Gulfstream jet, will be relocated from the Karaganda airport to Zhezkazgan a short time from now. At that point in Zhezkazgan, the crew will split up, with Mark Vande Hei and Joe Acaba boarding the NASA plane for a flight back to Houston. Alexander Mazurkin, the Soyuz commander, will board the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft for a flight back to Chkalovsky Airfield outside of his training base and his home in Star City, Russia, outside of Moscow. This is Mission Control Houston. We're still standing by, waiting to see if there will be any additional television with replays of today's landing activities that culminated just under an hour ago with the touchdown of the Soyuz MS-06 spacecraft in south-central Kazakhstan. Landing occurring at 8:31 p.m. Central Time, right on time. The 3 crew members are in good shape, out of their spacecraft and in an inflatable medical tent awaiting initial medical testing. This is Mission Control Houston. With all of the video exhausted from the landing site, we will wrap up our coverage for the day. Just to recap briefly, the 3 Expedition 54 crew members, Alexander Mazurkin of Roscosmos and NASA Astronauts Joe Acaba and Mark Vande Hei landed on target and on time at 8:31 p.m. Central Time, 8:31 a.m. Kazakhstan time on Wednesday morning, about 90 miles to the southeast of the town of Zhezkazgan. Despite some adverse weather conditions, it was an on-target landing. Search and recovery forces arrived at the spacecraft within minutes of touchdown, the Soyuz landing upright. The crew was extracted quickly from the spacecraft, placed in nearby chairs, and have been brought into a inflatable medical tent very close to the spacecraft. They've gotten out of their launch and entry suits. They're in more comfortable flight clothing and undergoing initial medical tests at the moment. The plan is calling for a NASA Gulfstream jet and a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft to fly from Karaganda, well to the northeast of the landing site, to Zhezkazgan, where the crew members will be flown as well by helicopter and will board their respective aircraft, with Vande Hei and Acaba set to return to Houston, Mazurkin set to return to his training base and his home at Star City, Russia. So with that, we'll conclude our coverage for the day. The Expedition 54 crew is safe and sound back on Earth following 168 days in space. This is Mission Control, Houston.